Today we are taking a look at the artwork of T.C. Steele, a Midwest Impressionist painter, and how he used value and color relationships in these paintings. T.C. Steele was born in 1847, died in 1926, and he grew up and lived and painted in Indiana. He was a Midwest painter. Now, he did go to school briefly in Chicago and Cincinnati, but then a group of supporters got together, maybe a group of patrons would be a better term, got together and supported him and sent him off to Europe to study, which I think is a great idea, which I would have had that when I was studying, as bunch of patrons sending me to Europe for a few years. I think it was fairly common back then. And he studied at the Munich Royal Academy, the Munich School of Painting, where a lot of American artists went to study. William Merritt Chase, Frank Duvernay, John Henry Twatchman, they all studied there, as well as a bunch of others. Again, it really influenced American painting during the 1800s. And this is one of his paintings, either while he was still in school or when he got back. It does look very Midwest, so it could have been back in Indiana. And this is reminiscent of the Munich school. A lot of high contrast, a lot of dark darks, light lights. So very, very strong contrast and kind of harmonized with black. Black is kind of the blue in this painting. These trees back in here have a bluish feel to it, but it's black, and a lot of black in the shadows. But black is the color used to mute the lights, harmonize the lights together. Same thing in the shadows, a lot of black in the shadows. And my guess is his palette's very limited here. Maybe a muted earth palette of kind of an earth red, yellow ochre, maybe a blue, but I'm not sure. So kind of a red, yellow, blue with black, maybe taking the place of blue, which happened a lot. When you use black as a blue, it looks bluish in relation to everything in your landscape. If you use the black as a blue sky, if you get the values right, it would look like a blue sky, obviously more muted. But he's using black here as a color to harmonize both his colors and his value. Now here's later painting of his impressionistic style that he moved into and started a regional impressionist movement there in Indiana that became very popular and still popular today. And is an outdoor painting movement as well, and included John Adams and Otto Starke and William Forsythe. Otto Starke is of no relation, but a good painter. But these guys stayed in Indiana, just painted there in the Midwest. And what I like about their paintings, and we're just talking about T.C. Steele right now, today, is his use of color and value to achieve the depth and atmosphere. Also the color harmony that he gets, color and value relationships. Using maybe more pure colors here, more pure blue, red that could be alizarin crimson, which is a red violet or a cad red medium. Yellow, a cad yellow light or medium, and then ultramarine blue or cobalt blue. Those are more pure colors. And when you use those pure primaries to mix your colors, you get a cleaner looking painting like this one. Now, you can still have grays by mixing complements. You mix orange with yellow and red, then blue, which is what's left when you use a primary palette. That's going to mute the orange because they're complements. Or blue and yellow makes the green. The only color left is red. That's going to mute the green. So you can mute or create grayer colors by using pure primaries. So you get strong colors, but also some nice grays or muted color by using those primaries. Whereas in this one, black is used, so your grayish color has a lot less color to it because black does tend to kill color. It's still a nice painting. Not saying it's wrong compared to this one, but it's just a different way of seeing atmosphere, more in terms of color than just value. This sees atmosphere in terms of dark and light, the lighter background trees, the darker foreground stuff. Whereas this one, not only light and dark, things getting lighter as they go back, but also the temperature, the bluer colors, cleaner colors in the background, and the warmer colors in the foreground. That creates atmosphere as well. And we have a lot of his paintings here we kind of look at. Here's another one. This, you could say, is basically a green painting. But within that greens, all the greens, he's got at least 3 different greens. You have the yellow green of the grass. You have the bluer green of the background mountains. And then you have a green in kind of the foreground shadows. Also bluer green back in the shadows in the middle. So a definite 3 different types of green, because the color wheel has 3 different greens. Not just green, but blue green and yellow green as well. Then you can take those 3 colors and add different things to them using the secondary colors, oranges, violets, and greens, different greens. So a little more orange in the green shadows here, some red back in here, some violet in these distant mountains. So the colors relate to each other because he's using more pure primaries and then using other colors kind of as accents. You can see the violet in here. And on these digital images, you can never be sure of the color, but you see some greener colors, some red violets, some violets back in the background, some reds or oranges affecting the shadows in here, the more bluish, blue-green in the shadows in the foreground. And you can look at his colors. This is not as impressionistic, maybe a little bit more towards the early stage, because he's not using temperature quite as strongly. I'm guessing still using some black in the tree trunks and in the reddish orange here on the ground. So using some black still, but not as much. There's a bit more atmosphere here because he's using a bit more pure color. But this looks like more of a earth red along with some black, as opposed to using more pure color. Still very nice. Nice suggestion of sunlight in the background and shadow in the foreground. Now this is also an earlier one. I'm guessing more black than blue. So the sky is more of white and black with, I don't know, a little bit of red in it, red and yellow. Same thing with the tree trunks. Using black to harmonize the colors and work out the values, which gives you a muted painting. Foreground here is a bit stronger color than in the background. The background has a lot more black in it, and black is a cool color. So when you add black to these, reds and yellows in the background, it's going to give it more of a muted, cooler look, almost like a violet. Black and red makes a very grade violet. And that's what he's doing here. Again, as opposed to the stronger, more impressionistic, more pure colors. Now this one, really pure color. There's no black here that I can tell. Very, very strong, pure color. And he doesn't mute it as much. Here he's using pure color, but he's using more of the complements to knock down the colors. Still very strong, but not nearly as strong as that. That's very strong. But really forcing the background mountains or hills blue just to make them stay back there. And then that really strong red, orange, and orange right next to the blue creates that instant depth and atmosphere. I mean, it's pretty extreme, but it works. Same thing here. The sky is not blue. The sky is a kind of orange and violet with some green in it. Grass isn't always green. It is here, but a lot of yellows and oranges in there as well. But a lot of blue and violets in the shadows. and then a lot of yellows and oranges and reds in the light areas, so that that warm temperature contrast really suggests the light. But the value change, getting lighter as it goes back and cooler as it goes back, temperature change, really creates the atmosphere in there. And again, palette has more pure color than earth colors in it, which gives you that stronger. Here's another probably older painting, but a very nice one. I really like what's going on here because you can see probably using black in the background house, the background trees. Even this house right here has a lot of black in it with some red. So the black is kind of the moderating color to unify the colors and also create the value changes. So the green here is green and black. I don't know, the yellow, green grass might be yellow and black. That makes a really nice muted yellow-green. But everything harmonizes, again, I think because of the black and the earth colors. And he's using some pure color here in some of the grass on the ground, few spots of leaves in the trees. And while the sky is a warm sky, there's some yellow in it, probably 98% white, but some yellow and black in there to give it kind of a grayish warmth to it. In that kind of hazy atmosphere you get in the summer in the Midwest. They're great trees. I mean, just I like the simplification of the foliage, probably black and an earth red for the tree trunk, but it works well. It's not the pure color, pure primaries that he's using here, more earth colors and unified with kind of black. This one's a little more, I think, peak of his painting. He's using, I don't know, maybe some black, but a lot of pure color, very impressionistic. His brushwork is really nice. I like the turkeys right there. But a great job showing the depths, making that background mountain or hill. I don't know that you have mountains in Indiana. Background hill, just blue, violet, and it just stays back there. You don't have to mess with it. Same thing here with some of the blue violet showing through. It just gives you more depth. But a lot of variation in color in the greens and yellows and oranges and reds in the trees because it's a fall scene as opposed to summer. And the ground here is yellow-green. That's the main color, but then he has a lot of stuff scrubbed into it. Some greens and oranges and yellows. So it's broken up nicely. But he's a good one to study, to learn how to simplify things. How he's got these trees here, and they're pretty much just reduced to two values. An overall dark to make them upright and look like they're in shadow, and then just a light to show how the light hits it and creates the form on the tree. So two simple values, a little bit of color variation. There's some purple in there, some blue-green, green. I don't know, maybe a little black in this one, but not much. You can see how everything gradually gets bluer as it recedes. Because yellow is the first color that starts to fade as objects recede into the background. And when the yellow fades, the green trees turn a bit more blue-green. Then it fades more and the yellow drops away and you're left with blue, maybe a little bit of red. So you have blue or blue-violet in the distance. But again, very atmospheric. And his paint's very thick. I saw a bunch of his paintings in West Lafayette, Indiana, at an old mansion there that had a large collection of the Indiana Impressionists. And his paint was very, very thick. In some areas, just loaded on with a palette knife. But once you simplify the shapes and you've simplified all the big areas, you can load the paint on real quick because you're not, or real thick, because you're not doing a lot of detail. You're keeping your shapes big and simple. Then thicker paint makes more of an impact. I would zoom in, but I don't think it's a big enough file to, not too bad. You can see how thick the lights are in the clouds and in the grass. Here's another one here. Again, a bit more impressionistic, got that warm sunlight in the background and then the shadow in the foreground. A little cooler on the tree trunks and the shadowed areas, so not so much black as using a little more pure colors to come up with those cooler shadows. And then the value contrast of the darks on the tree trunk and the foliage against the lighter background creates that depth in there really well. So another one here, very atmospheric. Colors are more pure. I would say there's no black in this because you don't get nice, clean, grayish colors like that with black. And again, using black, there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to be aware your darks and your grays are not going to be very colorful. But some artists are more value oriented and they don't care about the color as much. And you can see the shadows in the background a lot lighter and a lot bluer. Further away the shadow, the more they turn to just a muted blue. You don't see much color in them because yellow and red has faded quite a bit by the time you get this far back. And it's just a muted blue. And that really shows the depth compared to the shadows on the tree trunks and the foliage in front. But a lot of nice color variation. There's another one. Again, that atmosphere, that haze, more muted in the background. A lot of red there in the background. But no yellow, because yellow, by the time you get back there, is going to fade. And everything's backlit. So you get a more hazy view when things are backlit. In other words, looking into the sun. Then your strongest colors are up front. And then in the background, the lighter colors are more muted. It's got them a little darker back in the background, but keeping them more muted as they gradually recede creates a depth and atmosphere. But always the strongest, most saturated colors up front to separate from the background. One more here from T.C. Steele. Then I have a few of my paintings I want to talk about that I've been working on recently and thinking about the color relationships and value relationships. Here also you got the background is blue, blue-violet, violet. In the foreground or middle ground, lighter colors, sunlit colors are going to be a lot warmer to pull them forward a little bit. Not a big file, this painting, so don't see it as clearly, but you can see the big shapes and his use of color temperature and value changes to create that difference in here. And you can get a lot of color variation like on the bank or the side of the river right in here. But start with an overall color that best represents that overall color and value. So he's got kind of a very light, I don't know, muted red-violet, kind of warm reddish violet. Then scrubbing into it some yellow green, some yellow orange green, some green. Same thing with the shadow here, probably blocked it in with a violet and then added oranges and reds and greens to it. But the violet still dominates. Same thing with this in here, it's more of a dark green than adding other colors, but the green kind of dominates. So simplifying big shapes and areas, create an overall value and color that you can paint into to add some color variation. And he did that really well. Here's a few of my paintings that I've been working on. This is a color study for a bigger painting from Colorado. And it's early fall, so a lot of green, blue-green, and then the yellow, yellow-orange. And with the yellow and the orange, I'm using violet to mute those. So a lot of violet mixed into these areas in here and in here. Not a lot in the sunlight, obviously. It's a little more pure yellow, yellow-orange. But the shadows and some of the yellow, yellow-greens have violet in them to cool them down a little bit, as well as violet and blue-violet in the background hills just to make them recede and stay back in the background. Now, value-wise, I have a lot of contrast of this foreground that's in shadow. So as a big overall shape, it's going to be a dark. dark and cooler color-wise, but dark value-wise. Then here I have the sunlit area, and that's going to be lighter. And then the background mountains are darker, and then the lighter sky. So I have dark, light, dark, light. And that contrast sets up a bit more drama. I think makes the painting a bit more exciting. It's a 12 by 16, kind of working out different ideas. I did a 10 by 12, tried a few different things, moved shapes of trees around, just tried some different ideas. And I tend to do that in just small paintings that I don't worry about finishing. This one I did finish, but a lot of the color studies are just ideas, and sometimes they end up just being thrown away, but their whole purpose is not finish, it's to kind of work out different ideas for color schemes. Now this is the bigger finished painting from this painting. So you can see I changed it quite a bit. Moved some of the trees around, added some things in the foreground. Also varied the color in the foreground a bit more. I saw this as more yellow, orange, yellow, green. Same thing back in here, a bit more yellow. Where the smaller one, I saw things more green. There's yellow and yellow-orange in the green, but it's more green. Green kind of harmonized everything here. But I had variations of green. I got yellow green, green green, blue green. I got orange green, red green, purple green. So green is kind of my modifying color here. This is probably early fall, which is what it was when I was in Colorado. And then back in the studio, I made it a bit more late fall by turning the grasses more on the yellow-orange side rather than so much green. Still a lot of green, but I moved from just green to yellow, green, yellow, yellow-orange, red-orange, a little more color variation. One more here. This one is also in the same area in Colorado. Value-wise, I'm still going with the idea of shadow here in the foreground, then sunlight hitting in here, and then shadow again, and then lighter sky, along with the fog. The fog creates a lot of contrast between the light fog and dark trees, and that, again, more drama in the painting. Keeping my lights a lot more saturated. In other words, by saturated, I mean I don't mute them at all. Or if I do, not very much. And then the colors within the shadows aren't quite as strong. They can be strong, saturated, but not fully saturated. They're not as strong as I can get it. I do mute them slightly. Actually, this area is also slightly muted, but not much. I try not to use straight, pure color from the tube. If I do, it's at the very end and it's in a spot or two that I want to stand out. But if all my colors are just slightly muted, then that's going to harmonize them a bit more, and I can decide where I want the strongest color at the end of the painting to make it stand out, like the red shirt or the yellow foliage on the aspens there. I can make those the strongest so they stand out the most. So talking about color and value relationships to make your color or your painting work together a lot better.